Welcome to the Evolved Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Coach P. I'm a little under the weather today, but that does not take away from the guest that we have going on today. He is truly a great example in our industry for someone who knows not only all about fitness, but how to lead and cultivate a business with great self-leadership principles. Evolve is highly involved with his next level coaching academy. I have the ultimate pleasure of hosting today, the one, the only, Chad Molyneux. And I hope I said your last name right. And if I didn't, my man, please correct me. How's it going, Chad?
You did. You're one of the few that have gotten it right. It's either Mullinex or I don't know, some other combination of words. But thank you for having me on, man. I'm excited for this.
Hey, thanks for making the time. I know you've got a crazy schedule, but the fact that you were able to make some time for us, we're really, really grateful, my man. So if you could just do us the honor, please tell us a little bit about Chad, a little bit about yourself, your background, what it is that you currently do, and then ultimately, how did you get into fitness, my man, Chad?
Yeah, 100%. You want me to go all into the story right now, or do you want to segment it out?
Let's segment it out a little bit. But if we get caught on a dragon, you just keep going, my man. I'm gonna let you flow.
I'll give you the quick intro. So my name is Chad. My real name is actually Chandler, which is a little fun fact to get us started here. I started in my fitness journey. Man, I was probably 15 years old when I got started, and how I fell in love with it was. Actually, my dad was not super fit, still isn't super fit. That wasn't really his forte. And I told myself at a young age that I did not want that character trait of my father. And I always wanted to be healthy and fit. So I started at 15. I started running. Running developed into strength and conditioning. Strength and conditioning developed into sports. I got to play a couple years of college lacrosse. And awesome. Then my love for sports fizzled out and my love for entrepreneurship started. And I started my business at the age of 19. And
holy crap.
That's the part that I would love for us to segment out, because I have a lot of mini stories within the overall story as well.
Where did you play lacrosse?
So I played lacrosse. Actually, this is funny. I went to 4 different schools in 5 years. And
holy crap.
Yeah, college was not my thing. And that's a part of the story. But, I played at Western New England College in Massachusetts, and then I transferred to UConn Stores. I didn't play lacrosse there. Went to UConn only for a semester. Basically failed out. They didn't tell me I failed out, but I got like a 1.6, and I was partying.
Oh man.
Yeah, I was partying at the time, and the spring semester I went back to Springfield College in Massachusetts and played another season of lacrosse. So 2 seasons.
Oh wow.
And I stopped.
Okay, one of my best friends that I grew up from home, he went to Robert Morris University for lacrosse, and he actually ended up coaching there afterwards for a long time. He's since been out of lacrosse now. He just kind of does it for the kids now. But that's super awesome. But you can definitely tell college may not have been your thing, but the real grind of entrepreneurship definitely was. You know what? I find a big parallel between that and the most successful people in the world, that you don't necessarily need a college education to be absolute badass in everything that you do.
School was never my thing, man. Even like back in grade school, I was always getting in trouble. I was always labeled with multiple different disorders, ADHD, ADD, it goes down the list, right? My parents didn't know what to do with me, so they would bring me into psychiatrists. They would get me on drugs, Ritalin, things of that nature.
Oh, man.
Eventually, I got off the Ritalin, but I still never actually became studious, if you will. I never fell in line. 8th grade, I was told that I should repeat the 8th grade. My math teacher told me that I wouldn't even get out of high school. I did all those things.
God.
I got out of high school. I did graduate college, but traditional school settings, sitting down, listening to a teacher was never my thing. I had a lot of energy. I wanted to do stuff. I wanted to move around. And I guess that led into this.
So what was the boiling point? What specific point in time did you just take a look at everything and go, you know what, this isn't for me, and I'm going to try out this new venture and get into entrepreneurship? Like, what day did that happen where that clicked for you?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I do have that story. Do you know my fiance, soon-to-be wife, Caitlin?
So I do know who she is. I do know who she leads as far as her fitness company, but I do not know her personally.
Yeah. Okay, cool. You did an interview with Sarah, though, her head coach.
Yes. Yeah, I know Sarah. Yep.
Yeah, so honestly, I have to give a ton of credit to her. In this college phase where I was going between many different colleges, the last college that I went to was a college called Western Connecticut State University. Okay. And Caitlin went to that college as well. Caitlin and I, little backstory before I get to the real one. Caitlin and I dated in high school. We dated junior year and senior year, and then we went our separate ways when I went off to school. But she stayed local and she went to this college, Western Connecticut. So the last college I went to was Western Connecticut, and that's kind of where we had our little reunion. And at this time, she was getting into the fitness space as well, and she was really into like the YouTube community and watching all these different YouTubers. And at this point, I didn't know anything about online fitness coaching or influencers or anything like that. I was just a guy who liked to work out and play sports and drink some beers.
Sounds like a good life to me, man.
Yeah. One time we were hanging out and she was like, I want to show you this guy named Christian Guzman. And I was like, all right.
Oh boy.
I was like, all right, let's check this out. Like, yeah, sure, I'm open to it. So we started, watching it on YouTube, and honestly, my initial reaction was I was a little adverse to it because I was doing some in-person training, and very typical in-person reaction when you hear about online for the first time. I was like, what is this? Why is this guy driving an Audi R8? Why is he flashing all this money? How is he actually helping people? This seems like a scam. So I was very adverse to it. At the end of that hangout, I walked Caitlin out to her car, and I went back down to my room, and we never actually turned off the TV. So Christian Guzman was still on. And I sat down at the edge of the bed, and I was like, contemplating turning the TV off, keeping it on. And I said, screw it, let's keep it on. Next thing I know, it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm down the rabbit hole. I've watched like every single YouTube video he's ever posted. And I was like, man, I think I want to be an online fitness coach. And this was right at the age of 19. And that's where the journey started.
Wow, that is incredible. And it's awesome that you sped out Christian Guzman, because I feel like every individual like us that got into that online space and became really interested in social media had those class act guys that really kind of was like their gateway drug into this area. Like mine was Gary Vee. Like as soon as I started listening to Gary Vee, I brought all of his books and started reading them. I remember buying, I forget the name of one of his later ones, but literally took it onto the plane when I was going to visit family, and I read it all in one thing. I was like, oh, this is cool as shit. Like it really got me into what grinding actually gets you when you work hard. And so started following him. I watched a lot of Christian Guzman. There was a ton of guys at that time. So it's really cool that sparked it. So where did you go from there, and what did you start to develop for yourself? Because you mentioned online coaching, but what you do now is actually coaching online coaches. So what was the first steps that got you going before you actually got to where you are now at NLCA?
Really quick before we go further on the growing the business side, I have a funny story about Caitlin, and this is why I gave her so much credit. It's all about the people you know, man. It's all about the people you meet. When we were in high school, I sat next to one of her friends in chemistry class, and her name was Allie Loda, and she came into chemistry class one day. Allie Loda did, sat down, and this was right around homecoming. And she was like, I have two girls that want to go to homecoming with you. One is named Caitlin and one is named Danielle. You need to make a decision. And I was like, I wasn't super popular. I was like, holy crap. Like, these are two of like the most attractive girls in the school. Like, God just blessed me today. And I asked for 24 hours. And I went home, called all my buddies. Who should I go with? Obviously, I went with Caitlin. But I always tell that story as like a pivotal part in my life, because what if I didn't choose Caitlin? What if I chose Danielle? Danielle would have never showed me Christian Guzman, and you and I wouldn't be on this podcast today.
That's, I love thinking about things like that, because, people ask me all the time, you should have gone that other direction, or you should have done this, you should have done that. And I had a pivotal moment and with me as well, where I had the choice of where I wanted to go do my PhD, Arizona State or Kansas. And even though I went through absolute hell with everything I've gone through at ASU, I tell people all the time, I would never trade it, because it gave me the experiences I needed to get to where I am today. It taught me the lessons I needed to learn. God put me in that right place. And I was just like, yeah, you know what? I would never change a damn thing.
Yeah. I just wanted to share that. I thought that was really cool.
No, I love that. I appreciate that. All those little stories we got to know, because that shows who Chad is and how you became the best version of yourself.
100%. What was the original question?
So now we started, you watched Christian Guzman videos. What evolved from that?
About 2.5 years of hell, I would say. So more backstory. My parents, they tried very, very hard. We grew up in a what would be called a very safe town with good economics, with good schooling. But they, and I'm just going to be blunt, they didn't deserve to live in that town from an economic standpoint. They both had to work. They worked a lot, cut a lot of coupons, but they sacrificed a lot to give me and my brothers a good life and a good opportunity, which obviously I'm very grateful for. But the reason I say 2.5 years of very hard work and a lot of struggle is I didn't have any handouts. I didn't have my parents didn't help me. They weren't very supportive of the idea to begin with, because obviously, I'm going to school, albeit I'm paying for my own schooling. They wanted me to, take the traditional route.
Right.
So during those 2.5 years, didn't invest in any mentors, and that's a big learning lesson. I would have invested in mentors a hell of a lot earlier. I was young. I was 19, and I was a man with a lot of testosterone. So I kind of wore my ego on my chest, if you will. And I told myself, like, I'm going to build this business on my own. I'm going to be self-made, is what I would tell myself. And obviously, I've definitely relinquished my ego since then, and understand that it's you need an army in order to grow something special. But back then, I didn't understand that. So for 2.5 years, I was trying out all these different strategies, picking up all these free, advices that Gary Vee would hand out and some of these other influencers would hand out, but didn't get any traction. Very, very little traction. And at about the 2-year mark, I started questioning, like, man, can I really do this? And I could remember a moment in my $800 Jeep Cherokee when I was with Caitlin, and I was just talking to her, and I was like, man, like, I don't know if I could do this. Maybe I should try this thing or that thing. And she doubled down, and she was like, no, I mean, you've come this far. Like, you got to figure this out. So at that point, kind of got over my ego a little bit, and I was like, I should probably invest in some help. So I found this mentor. I forget how I found this mentor, but I got on the phone, and he was like, all right, it's $6,000 for 3 months of coaching. Now, at this point, I maybe had $6 in my bank account. I don't know if you've seen the videos that I post on Instagram from time and time again, but I was like, many times I would deposit water bottles just for extra cash. I would always scrounge up my coins just so I can pay for gas in my crappy car. I did not have $6,000. So when I heard that, it sounded like 6 million. But I told the guy, and if you've taken sales calls for Kayla, you'll laugh at this one. But I told the guy, I was like, all right, give me 2 weeks. I'm gonna come up with the money. And that's like, everyone knows, like, all right, this person's not a good lead. But during that time, I legitimately came up with $2,000, not the $6,000, but I came up with $2,000 to put down a down payment. How I did that, I went on Facebook. I found all the different odd jobs you could do, cutting someone's lawn, blowing someone's leaves, right? I've sold a bunch of like the very little things that I owned, which was like clothes and headsets and things of that nature. And I came up with $2,000. So called them back, put down the $2,000, and the remaining $4,000, which I had no idea how I was going to pay for. I thought, all right, I'm going to get these clients, and I'm going to be able to pay for this thing, right? So long story short, I didn't have any success from the program. I signed literally one client, and I can remember the payment plan. It was a $200 a month payment plan for 10 months, which means that I only made $400 in the program. So now I was short $3,600, and it was the end of the program. So I financed the $3,600 that I owed this mentor through PayPal credit. Didn't know how I was going to pay back PayPal credit. So eventually I had debt collectors coming after me. It was kind of a bit of a mess, but story progresses. At the end of that, I was like, all right, I checked in with myself. I still wanted to do this. I still had a lot of motivation. I just wasn't sure how. Try to get on my own, tried to come up with the strategies that, I would find on the internet, things of that nature. 3 months go by, and I have another mentor reaching out in my DMs, doing a little DM outreach. At that time, I didn't know. I thought that it was just a guy being nice, trying to help me out. But I got on the phone with him, same thing. He said $6,000 for 3 months. At that time, I picked up a side job as a waiter. So I had a little bit more income. I also was working as an in-person trainer as well. And I was on a 3-month payment plan, $2,000 a month. And I joined that program. And by month 4, I made my first $10,000 month. And this is probably 3 years in since I started, which I started in 2015. So I had my first $10,000 month in 2018, September of 2018. And we can keep going, but that was probably like the first breakthrough for me. And
that is amazing. And I love how you really outlined how you went through hardship, but you did what it took to get to that next step, regardless of the hell that you had to go through to get there. And, when I talk to a lot of people who, I mentor students when it comes to being as a professor at the university, and they always ask me, like, Coach, how did you get to where you are now? And I was like, you just do hard things, man. You have to do hard things, and you have to be willing to walk through doors scared shitless, not knowing what's going to happen when you go out through the other side. So I think that you just brightly demonstrated how exactly that is done in real life. So I really admire you for that, Chad.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Honestly, fitness primes me a lot for what business was going to hand me. And I did a lot of crazy workouts back in the day that I'm happy I saw through to be able to handle this adversity as well.
And you hear a lot of people actually say that fitness is that gateway pathway to being able to do those hard things. Like Bedros Keuilian talks about that. What's his? Who's the crazy ex-military guy who runs incessantly?
Not Jocko Willings. You're talking about the guy who wrote the book "Don't Hurt Me."
Yes, and never finished. Oh, that's gonna kill me because it's literally
man.
on my shelf to read.
I'm drawing a blank on it. David Goggins. There we go.
Thank you, David Goggins. And he says the exact same thing, how fitness is that kind of entryway. Yeah. So now you hit your 10,000, you hit your first 10,000 a month. What eventually led you from being in fitness, training clients, to coaching now coaches themselves? What was the birth of NLCA? How did that idea spark out, and what time did that occur?
Yeah, that's a great question. So 2018, things really started picking up for me in my own online fitness coaching business. Started in 2015, technically, without much success. Between the years of 2018 to 2020 is when I went all in on my online fitness coaching business. And over those 2 years, I really started to develop more of a passion for business than I did for the fitness side. And I always knew that I wanted to start some sort of business consulting or help individuals do this, but I didn't feel right doing it until I reached a certain point in my own online fitness coaching business. What that point was for me was delegating out all the roles and actually effectively managing and leading that staff to a successful revenue point. And once I hit that point is when I said, all right, cool, I'm going to start helping individuals. And I started helping people in their business in January of 2020. Was Kayla my first or my second? She would hate me if I don't remember, but she was either my first or my second business coaching client that we worked together in a one-to-one capacity. From there, I started having success with my one-to-one business coaching students. And that's when I decided, all right, I think I want to bring this to a scalable level. And that's where when I say we, I'll explain in a minute, created NLCA. I actually had a partner when I first started. Her name is Dayla McDevitt. We ended terms amicably. We're still great friends. We see each other all the time. But we started together. When I moved down here to Austin, Texas, we formed a really good business relationship. And over a couple of drinks, we came up with the idea and we began.
That is awesome. And I'm actually pretty familiar with her because she is all over the pages still, and I see her everywhere when it comes to those meetings.
Yep, 100%. She's great.
So as far as now, for our listeners who might be a little bit unaware of what NLCA is, could you please describe what is the function of NLCA? What is the premise? What are the overall goals and objectives of that business?
Yeah, in a nutshell, it's helping personal trainers and aspiring fitness coaches. So you don't have to, it's not a prerequisite in order for you to be a personal trainer. You could just be aspiring to be an online fitness coach. We help you bring your business online and create a profitable online fitness coaching business. We have 2 programs. One is our 10K Accelerator program, which is geared to taking you from $0 to $10,000 a month. And then we have our other program, which is our master coaching program. That's more geared around individuals who, yes, they've achieved $10,000 a month, but they're burnt out, right? Their original desire and dream of getting into entrepreneurship was for freedom and creating a life of freedom. But usually what happens is when they hit that $10,000 a month mark, they're wearing all the hats in their business and they're like, I'm not very free. I feel like I'm working, but I'm just working for myself here. So Master Coach is geared towards delegating and leadership and building out and hiring a team.
I feel like because I have some of those coaches on my roster that I work with at Evolve, and they are in NLCA, and they have those very same types of challenges that they go through. And as we start to get into the next part here of the questions that I'm going to ask you, I would love to hear what are the types of things that you do in that master coach's curriculum to teach these coaches, hey, here's how you have more of an integration style of your lifestyle to really start to actually be able to breathe again, because those are the biggest hurdles that we usually run into, and why my coaches don't sleep because they're up until midnight making sales calls. I'm just like, you got to do something about this. And so obviously NLCA has become a huge thing. It is your main priority. This is something that you put all your effort into. I see advertisements for it everywhere. It's professional as hell, and it's definitely legitimate. What is the future of NLCA? Where do you see NLCA going for yourself? And what's that 5-year plan of what you see this developing into from where it is now?
That's a really great question. Yeah, good questions, Chris. Right now we have a kind of a 3-phase plan. Internally, we really want to make sure that the 2 products that we have, 10K Accelerator and Master Coach, are cutting edge. We also want to make sure that product suite funnel is seamless, which is individuals going from that 10K Accelerator program, the entry level program, into our higher level program. And I would say that we're really trying to perfect that still. I feel like there's a big shift in the market right now in terms of the introduction of AI. I also think there's a lot of strategical changes in terms of online fitness coaching from a sales and lead generation perspective. So we just newly integrated that into our product suite, honestly, just about 30 to 45 days ago. So a lot of this new stuff was just rolled out. Once we feel like we've really perfected that, we're getting solid client reviews. The funnel from beginning program to end of program is exactly where we need it to be in terms of percentage wise. Our next big move from there strategically is getting the message out more. So what that looks like is being on more ad platforms, not just Instagram and Facebook, but spreading out to Google, YouTube, TikTok, Spotify as well. But the big thing, and the thing that I'm most excited for, is stage 3. So stage 3, in order for us to have the impact and the income that we're trying to create internally, we need to create more products. So we'll start rolling out some different products, which we have some ideas. I'll share. One is actually something that you guys contributed to, which is taking the certification and melding it into a certification plus mindset program. Okay. What we've noticed is we do lose out on some clients who are interested in our 10K Accelerator program because they don't feel qualified yet as a coach, which the certification would solve that problem. And then the second aspect is they don't feel ready yet to make that jump into entrepreneurship, and that's a mindset gap. Awesome. So we actually want to create a new program that solves those 2 problems, which then seamlessly, once those are solved, they can roll right into the other programs that help them scale.
That's extraordinary. And I find that that's so very important, because so many people now are looking for that mental health aspect of how they get through their careers on a day-to-day basis, and just figuring out, how do I life right now when it comes to everything that's doing.
It's a big thing, and no one really talks about it a whole ton in terms of the entrepreneur space, and the leadership space, right? Because you're not supposed to show weakness. Right. One other thing I forgot, actually, sorry, 2 other things I forgot in terms of the 5-year vision on what we're focused on. We're currently also working on some software. We're working on a lead generation AI software where essentially
bring some GPT into that.
Yeah, it would be your DM outreach individual or your sales representative, except it would be very hands off and automated. So appointments would just be coming to you. The last thing that we're talking about as a leadership team, but we're not entirely sure if we're going to move forward on it yet or not, is expanding not just to fitness coaches, but expanding our business strategies to teaching all coaches. So anybody who would claim to be a coach that doesn't just fall within the fitness realm.
Awesome, Chad. It sounds like you guys are really headed in an awesome, positive direction, and it sounds like you definitely care about your team as well, taking them along on this journey with you. The way that I want to go from this now is shifting gears from a business perspective to now a leadership perspective. And to start this conversation, what I want to ask you is, how do you define leadership, and how would you define your leadership style?
It's a great question. This is something that I've thought about for a while in terms of leadership. And honestly, in the beginning of like me really diving into becoming a better leader for NLCA and for our clients and for our team, is you always think of the Hollywood depiction of leadership, right? You think of the Wolf of Wall Street, loud, boisterous, like I'm in your face, like rah, rah, let's go. And I definitely fell victim to that in the beginning. Like I thought that's what it was. And the biggest feedback that I got from staff members at that time and from individuals at that time is I wasn't empathetic enough, and I didn't listen enough, and I was way too only focused on the goal and the outcome and not enough on the people. So I've completely shifted my own personal views on what leadership really is. And at the end of the day, I think it's not being loud, it's not being boisterous, it's none of those things. Sure, if you're that type of person, great, you can add that into your repertoire, right? More power to you. But at the end of the day, it's being of service, right? It's setting your team up for success. It's giving them, the exact guidelines, sharing the vision, and making sure that they could be successful in their day-to-day role, which in return makes the company successful, which obviously makes the CEO successful as well.
I love that, Chad. I think that's huge. I do, part of my teaching is not only do I teach exercise science, but in every single class I teach a human aspect of it using what's called habitudes. And habitudes are little leadership books by Dr. Tim Elmore, which will teach you certain principles of self-leadership, mindset. There's a lesson in there called The Starving Baker, which teaches you how to keep your own tools sharp and making sure that you're prioritizing yourself to be able to give to others. But ultimately, all these books are surrounded by the theme of servicing others. And when I'm trying to develop young students, it's teaching them how to lead themselves so that they can lead others better. So I loved when you said the word service, because that is my belief when it comes to how I approach my coaching, how I service my students. And I think that's ultimately how you create the best community. So it sounds like with you at the forefront of what NLCA stands for, that is definitely something that you've adopted. So when you are servicing the people that you're leading, what are some of the main important principles that you yourself lead your own life and yourself personally that allow you to be that best leader for not only people in NLCA, but the individuals in your life, personal relationships, friends, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, the first thing that we have our students do when they start to bring on staff members is identify, what are their core company tenets and what is their mission statement. Our three company tenets or values are act first, truth first, and mission first. And I can go very deep into it, but I won't. But act first essentially means in life, you're not going to have all the answers, but take action anyways, right? Don't fall victim to paralysis by analysis. Move forward and assess as you're moving forward. You're going to fail. Look at those failures as lessons and continue to move on. That's something that's definitely helped me in my career and is still a very important value in where our business is at. Mission first is our second one. So mission first essentially means don't make decisions that are only self-serving. Analyze when you're making decisions, analyze your decision and ask yourself, how is this going to impact the overall mission, and is it aligned with the overall mission? That's mission first. Last one is truth first. Internally, we always want to be very truthful. We don't want any drama. The best way to eliminate drama is just to shoot it straight. All right. So for truth first, it's, don't hold anything back. If you're feeling a particular type of way, even if it's with your higher up, or if it's with somebody who's technically below you, just tell them how it is. Tell them how you're feeling, right? And then you guys can hash it out like two adults. On the receiving end of that, though, if we're going to be very candid, you also have to be open to feedback and hearing.
Right, and that's a big problem for a lot of people. And I felt like I started to learn that lesson, in my late teens into early 20s, that's something that you definitely got to build. But that is a great skill to have when it comes to relationships themselves, especially within the workplace. What are some habits for yourself that you've adopted to making sure that you keep your own leadership tools sharp when you're approaching your workday every day?
Yeah, it's a great question. Routine's very, very big for me. For me, I wake up very, very much at the same time every single day, even on weekends. Somewhere between 4:45 and 5:30 is usually the wake up time. From there, I'm starting the day with some form of exercise. Usually, it's a walk. On that walk, I'm always trying to continue to learn or be inspired. So I'll leverage podcasts like this or masterminds or things that I'm a part of. And then I'm very consistent in my workout routine and my nutrition routine as well. So in terms of keeping my quote unquote leadership skills sharp, it's keeping myself sharp. And that starts with fitness. It starts with sleep, when you wake up, when you go to bed, and continue to educate yourself along the way as well.
I think that's absolutely awesome, Chad. I'm really big on intent and routine. That's something that Sarah from your fiance's business was big on herself, and she talked on when we had our interview together. And it just happened to be around the time that I was teaching that lesson to all of my athletes that week. And that really is the game changer. If you don't take that 10, 15 minutes a day, either in the morning or at night before you go to bed, to say, hey, what is my intent for today or tomorrow? Like, what did I do today that I could have done better? Because a lot of people, I find, continue to go in circles, round and round and round. And then they always ask me, well, I don't know what to do to change. Nothing's changing. I'm like, are you actually taking account for what's happening? Are you reflecting? Are you actually saying, oh, maybe I should pull back on this action and do this action instead and try to be consistent with this activity? And I found for myself, sitting down at the end of my evening, reflecting, turning off the damn TV and Instagram, and pulling out my full focus planner. Thanks, Jen. Okay, you know who you are. All right. And writing out exactly, all right, how am I going to prioritize my top 3 things I need to do tomorrow to keep my life going forward? Then that keeps me sharp. That keeps me on point. And it actually allows me to be less distracted by outside forces, which I think is a big problem for a lot of the coaches that you and I work with on a daily basis, because they find that they're getting so hammered by all the calls that they have on Zoom and everything else. But then all of a sudden they're constantly looking at their phone and not back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's like, well, you're burnt the hell out, my friend. It's like, we got to learn some boundaries here and set yourself up with intent the day before so that that's not going to happen to you. With you being a business owner and entrepreneur yourself, what are some challenges that you face on a daily basis? Because this is definitely an area that I know a lot of my coaches deal with personally each and every day. And when you do get, for lack of a better word, put on your ass, how do you get up out of that hole?
I would say that's actually where I'm strong. Is if something happens, I act first, and that's definitely my strength. Chris, where I'm weak is not feeling like I'm doing enough, I would say. And this is an interesting time for me in terms of my career development. Is as CEO, there's fewer things that I'm focused on, but the things that I'm focused on have a lot of depth. And I'm very used to having a schedule where I'm nonstop doing stuff all the time. And I feel like I've gotten very accustomed to that schedule. But now that I have an amazing leadership team, and I have an amazing team that carries out a lot of the day to day, and I'm focused on these few things, but very important things. My biggest challenge is always questioning, like, am I doing enough? Like, should I be filling my plate more, or is this the right amount of work for where I'm at in business?
I find you and I have that in common 100%. And that's usually the biggest criticism that people have on me when people are either grading me or giving me feedback. They're like, Chris, you just do too goddamn much. I'm just like, I just want to help everybody. God, like, it's just like, I want to do it all. Because I work with Kayla, I'm a teacher, and then I'm running the podcast. I'm doing all these things, but they give me such fulfillment. It's like, I want to keep doing more. I want to keep giving more. And so I think that is definitely a big challenge for most people. So I definitely feel you there, Chad. If people wanted to learn more about how to get into entrepreneurship and how to learn more about running businesses, what are some resources that have helped you? Like, I know you said you had mentors and you had people that you've learned from, that you invested in, but what are some other ways that you have used throughout your career experience, as far as ways that you learned about what it is that you do every day, whether it's people online on YouTubers or books themselves about business? What have been the greatest resources for you that have helped you develop?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the beginning, it was podcasts. An individual that I started listening to day one, and I'm a part of his mastermind now and haven't stopped listening to since 2015, is Andy Frisella. His podcast, the one back in the day was called the NFCEO. Now it's called the Real AF podcast. That was the first one that I listened to. I really believe in his business ethics, although I know he's very brash and can.
Oh, I love him.
Come across as very hardcore. I do believe he is a great entrepreneur, and he doesn't know it, but he was a phenomenal resource for me in the beginning. Another one in the beginning, and sales is so important in the beginning. The skill of selling is really important. Another individual who is really pertinent in my growth was Grant Cardone. Listened to
Grant,
all the podcasts, all the books. One in particular, if you are trying to get good at sales, is the Closer Survival Guide. Only get the audiobook though, because Grant will actually go through each objection and role play it out. And what I used to do is I would listen, pause, and then I would role play it with Caitlin, and I would do it for every single one in that book. And I believe there's over 100.
Holy crap.
So that was a really good resource for me as well. I would say those two, probably the most impactful in terms of getting the business off the ground. I've had a switch recently though, although I am in Andy Frisella's mastermind, Arte Syndicate. I've actually gotten off podcasts and more on books, I've realized. And
Okay.
if I could speak to my younger self, I would have said like, bro, like you need to read more. I used to label myself as like, I'm not a reader. And maybe that's because of my past with school, which we talked about. But reading, in my opinion, now is way better than podcast or audio.
What book are you currently reading?
I'm reading, and this is what I was looking over. Raving Fans. It's
Okay.
a revolutionary approach to customer service by Ken Blanchard. It's great.
Do you have a top 3 or 4 books that you absolutely love or have that are at the top of your echelon favorites of all time? They could be business related or anything else related that have helped you develop as a guy.
Yeah, so when I say that I made that switch this year, I really mean it. So I've read 6 books this year, but prior to that, I probably didn't read a book since like high school. So my depth and list of books is very minimal.
I've also said the same thing once I completed my PhD that I would finally get back into reading because I absolutely love it, both fiction, self-development, and just learning everything I can. I've got probably 5 different sports biographies just ready to rock and roll. I probably have at least a couple self-development and big stoicism books. I love stoicism. Ryan Holiday does a great job of
Yeah,
breaking them down, making them easier to learn. And then there's a whole bunch of just big ones. I'm interested in health because, exercise science nerd. But there's just tons of things that I want to do to just develop as a human being when it comes to reading. With us getting closer to the end here, and you being a great example of what it takes to continue to develop and continue to build yourself as you're leading yourself into your business and fighting for the future. For our individuals who are just getting into coaching, who are green as green can be, or who are going through struggles and trying to build their business, who feel like, why am I doing this? I feel like quitting every single day. What are some shining pieces of advice that you could give to those individuals that they could take right now? If you were their mentor, how would you mentor those individuals?
one thing that I don't think is talked about enough for beginning coaches trying to grow their coaching business is what's your ultimate desire. I think there's really 2 categories, and this is going to be very general. Obviously, there's more categories, but I think generally speaking, there's 2 categories of desires. I think you have the individuals who are very growth minded and want to grow the biggest business possible for whatever reason, insecurity, money, or maybe just to see how far they can take it. I classify myself as that individual. The other type of individual I would say is somebody who's trying to get into business to create a lifestyle, right? Maybe they want to travel more, spend more time with their family, whatever it may be. But my biggest advice for the individuals in the beginning is to get really clear on that, because I can't tell you how many people I've seen get in it because they thought they wanted to grow the biggest business possible and then become just absolutely miserable and quit coaching altogether. That would be my biggest piece of advice.
I think that's absolutely huge. And I know many of our coaches who do already look up to you from their involvement in NLCA will definitely take that to heart. Chad, I've really enjoyed having you on the podcast today. The way that I always like to end our conversations with everyone who comes up on my podium is to share with our audience what is probably some of the biggest lessons of life that you have learned. And if you had to sum everything up in one quote as the biggest quote that had the biggest impact on you, what would that quote be?
Don't have a lot of quotes because I didn't read a lot of books. I'm just thinking through some of the biggest life lessons that have impacted my life. What came to mind first? I'm a very gut instinct type person. What came to mind first is move fast. I don't think enough people are moving quickly in their life. Life is too freaking short. If you want to do something, just go fucking get it. Like what's the holdup? Like we're all gonna die. This earth is gonna die. Like we're going to be a fine dust at some point. So go
Right.
have some fun, go take action, and actually live the life that you fucking want.
What do you like to do for fun, Chad?
What do I like to do? I like to fish. I'm going fishing in a month from now. I like to hike.
Nice.
I'm an outdoorsman, but I'm not an outdoorsman. Like I grew up in Connecticut, so we did a ton of outdoor stuff, but now I live in the big city of Austin, Texas. So I don't get to do it as much, but when I do get some free time, I like the outdoors.
When's the big day, my man?
July 22nd.
Oh my gosh, it's coming up soon, man. Yeah, I saw you getting the first dance practice going on. How'd you do?
Yesterday was our first lesson, and I'm stiff as a board, man. So that's why I signed us up for some dance lessons.
Did you break your girl's toes, man? Come on, be honest.
No. I promise I didn't. I promise.
Chad, thank you so much for your time today. I know that everyone in our community is going to find everything you said today invaluable and a definite resource for them. If people wanted to learn more about Chad, more about NLCA, where could they get more information about your services, about your company, and about you yourself?
Yeah, you could check me out at on Instagram with Sorry, Caitlin's walking in. I know you said quiet.
Oh, all good, man. All good. Hi, Caitlin.
Jeez. On Instagram, it's _fit CEO. For our fitness business, though, or sorry, for our business coaching, it's Next Level Coaching Academy on Instagram. I would say we post most of our content there. If you want to check me out on my podcast, The Fit CEO by Chad Molyneux is another great resource too.